started with our roll call to check quorum, Sandy?
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay? We will start with Assad Brown. I'm not seeing her.
Asada, not here.
Oh, Asada. Maybe I wrote that down wrong. Cecily Harris.
Here.
Todd Kemry.
Todd Kemry is here.
Bob Moeller.
Here.
Jeremy Peichel. Canna Yang had said she may be a little bit late, but is coming. I don't see her yet. Anthony Taylor. And Monica Dillenberg.
Here.
All right. Antonio Russo. Okay, we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. We'll call ourselves to order. Before we get started with our agenda, I just want to explain what we're doing with our remote meetings right now. As you know, COVID-19 has still caused us to alter our meeting procedures, and the Met Council's chair has determined it's not practical or prudent to conduct in-person meetings due to the pandemic. So the Met Council and its committees and advisory commissions will conduct meetings in accordance with Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021, and members will participate by telephone or other electronic means, which is what we're doing here. Given that it's not feasible for the public to attend those meetings in person, the council will permit pre-registered members of the public to comment during the public invitation portion of this meeting. The public is encouraged to monitor this meeting remotely via our website and YouTube, and the public may also submit comments to public.info@metc.state.mn.us, and we will respond promptly. So that's a change to how we're doing our public invitation portion later. I know people have been clamoring for us to have a way for them to actually speak besides just sending us emails. And so now there's going to be a way for you to join in the WebEx with a pre-registration to that email address. And that is now added to our agendas. So for those of you who have been waiting for that, we've finally gotten some technology glitches out. So with that, we'll move on to approval of our agenda for the day, which we can do by consent. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda as posted? Okay, hearing none, we'll consider our agenda approved as presented and move on to approval of minutes from our July 1st, 2021 meeting. For this, we will take a motion and second by members who were present at that meeting.
I motion to approve the minutes of July meeting. This is Monica.
Thank you, Monica. Do we have a second?
This is Bob. I second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Do we have any discussion or modification to those minutes?
Hi, Tony. This is Cecily. I wasn't at the meeting, but I did read the minutes and read the discussion about, you know, how we're going to be continuing to meet remotely for the time being. And of course, what you just said earlier this afternoon. So a question I have, you know, it seems like, you know, when we met in person, we could just sort of signal you with the wave of a hand when we wanted to comment or ask a question, but we don't seem to really have a process for these meetings. Some people are using the raise hand. Some people are just, you know, jumping right in. I'm wondering if that was discussed at all.
It hasn't really. We've been kind of winging it there. I will say that the raised hand thing works pretty well, with the one caveat that our list of participants, once we add in all the staff and things, is long enough that I have to scroll a bit to see everybody. So even with that, it can take me a moment to realize what's happening. So I've been attempting to do that and mostly succeeding, but occasionally people catch me and have mentioned that they've been trying still. So it's a little of each for me still. I don't know what the right answer to that is.
Right, and
But yeah.
Tony, my question isn't meant by any means as a criticism, but my point was just to try to make sure everyone has a chance to, jump in and ask their questions and make comments. We have some newer people on the commission, and, again, just to make sure they're comfortable as well.
Sure. Yeah, certainly if you as some people are happy to just jump in. If you're a little more sit back and wait your turn type, the raise hand thing definitely works well for that. And we will make sure to get to you. It's just it may be a struggle for me to see which order they come in, but we'll make sure to save time for that. So yes. I know especially new commissioners that may not be familiar with what's happening are not sure sometimes about speaking up, but you should certainly feel free to jump in whenever and ask questions if you need to. That is totally fine always. And yes, Emmett is reminding me that he attempts to watch the little hand raising thing for me as well. So he's usually the one that'll jump on me if I miss them.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Cecily. That's a good point. Any other comments on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I think we can proceed to a vote on those. And also following up on that, the other thing that's happening is I'm doing a little silent countdown in my head on those kinds of things before we move. So voting on the minutes as presented, go ahead, Sandy, for a roll call.
Okay, we will start with Asada Brown,
Aye.
Cecily Harris,
Well, I wasn't present.
Todd Kemry,
I wasn't present either.
Bob Moeller, Bob Moeller, Bob, if you're there, I think you're muted.
I vote aye.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy Peichel, is he here yet? Nope. Canna Yang, she here yet? Nope. Anthony Taylor, still not here. Monica Dellenberg
Aye.
and Tony Russo.
Aye,
Okay,
like that carries. Thank you, everybody.
all right. Yep.
That brings us to our public invitation portion. So as they were mentioning, this just changed. So I'm looking to see whether we had people wanting to comment in either way. I did not receive any comments by email for our old method, and we also have no people who have pre-registered to speak today. So as a reminder, if you wish to offer public comment at a future virtual meeting, please pre-register by emailing public.info@metc.state.mn.us. And you may also just send us your comments by email at that same address. Thank you. That will also be posted on each of the agendas, so you can find that link there. Oh, since we don't have those, that brings us on to our business item for the day, which is a Bruce Vento Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment for Ramsey County. We have Colin Kelly to present. Go ahead, Colin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members and commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Yep.
Great. I am Colin Kelly, planning analyst, and I'm here today to present the Bruce Vento Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment on behalf of Ramsey County. I should note that Scott County, Director of Planning and Development for Ramsey County Parks and Recreation, is also here to respond to questions at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. The Ramsey County portion of the Bruce-Vento Regional Trail is located near the center of the regional park system on the east side of Ramsey County. The figures on the left and in the center are figures 1 and 2 in the staff report. Ramsey County portion of the trail is the focus of this master plan amendment and includes segments 2B, 2C, 3, and 4 in the figure on the right. This is figure 3 in the staff report. Plan amendment does not address the St. Paul's portion of the Vento Trail south of Larpenteur Avenue. With this amendment, Ramsey County is seeking to update the regional trail master plan to accurately reflect boundary adjustments, long-term acquisition, public participation, equity analysis, long-term regional trail improvements, trail corridor realignment, and coordination with
Hey, Colin, we are having you kind of cut in and out a little bit. It might be better if you turned your video off to preserve bandwidth for audio.
That sounds great. Mr. Chair, can you hear me okay?
At the moment, we'll see how it goes.
Okay, keep me posted. If we could go to the next slide, please, that would be great. Public, stakeholder, and agency engagement for Ramsey County's portion of the Vento Trail occurred over the course of several years. For segments 2B and 2C, the project team coordinated engagement activities with Rushline BRT project staff and implemented both traditional engagement opportunities and opportunities specifically tailored to the diverse communities living in the corridor. Project teams strive to connect with historically underrepresented communities living and working near the trail corridor and prioritized events to attend using lenses of equity, inclusivity, maximizing voices heard, and geographic representation. Specific engagement activities included at the Hmong Village Shopping Center, input from the Rushline Community Advisory Committee, selected diverse communities along the corridor, and participation at the Dragon Festival in Latina. Participants in this engagement prioritized safety and security along the trail, so the use of landscaping to provide as much separation as possible, and connecting communities in northern county to multimodal trail and through its connection with the Rushline BRT. Segments 3 and 4, public open houses were held back in May 2016. The public meetings provided an opportunity for on the proposed alignments and design considerations for a future extension of the regional trail. County initiated a planning study in 2018 to refine alternative trail alignments and held 2 engagement meetings in October of that year. A final open house meeting was held in 2019 of the regional trail. Next slide, please. Can you hear me?
It's in and out. Sometimes you're perfectly great. Sometimes you completely cut out. It goes back and forth a bit.
Okay, I apologize for that. I will keep on moving here with partner engagement. Ramsey County maintains close relationships with the public agencies along the trail corridor, including the cities of St. Paul, Maplewood, White Bear Lake, and Vadnais Heights, as well as White Bear Township. Ramsey County also coordinates with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources at the intersection of the Gateway State Trail and the Vento Trail in Maplewood, as well as watershed organizations with jurisdiction over construction activities. Generally, any planning activities that relate to the trail corridor are coordinated with the appropriate agency staff for input and feedback. As part of the development and refinement of plans for Segment 3, the county convened a project management team consisting of representatives from White Bear Lake, Vadnais Heights, White Bear Township, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or BNSF Railway, Ramsey County Public Works, and Rushline leadership. This group provided feedback and direction on plan alignment alternatives, typical section details, and identified planned local projects for consideration in the design of segment 3 of the trail. Next slide, please. According to the plan amendment, Ramsey County recognizes its role and responsibility in advancing racial and health equity within the county. Planning for the regional trail corridor included full rounds of community engagement to ensure that the future alignment of the trail will best meet the needs of the communities that it seeks to serve. Preliminary studies for the regional trail also included identification of low-income and Black, Indigenous, and people of color or BIPOC populations within the county that will be served directly by the trail, and the enhanced multimodal access to those communities that are more likely to not own a car. The figure on the right is figure 6 in the staff report. The regional trail will benefit people with low incomes, BIPOC populations, those with disabilities, youth, and elders, by providing a safe, multi-use trail that connects housing, shopping, schools, jobs, services, and transit facilities. And because the trail is directly linked to Rushline BRT, the trail will provide improved transit access to communities and businesses around Frost Avenue, Highway 36, Interstate 694, and elsewhere. Next slide, please. For the regional trail can generally be broken down into 3 main segments: the Rushline collaboration, or segments 2B and 2C, Berkeley Road to White Bear Avenue extension, or segment 3, and a future extension, or segment 4. We'll start with the Rushline collaboration and move to segments 3 and 4 in the next 2 slides. As you may know, portions of the regional trail will run adjacent to the Rushline BRT. The figure at the bottom of the slide is figure 4 in the staff report. From Carpenter Avenue, just east of Lake Phelan, to Berkeley Road, just north of I-694, the trail will be reconstructed and realigned. Further north, from White Bear Avenue to Whitaker Street, a BRT station will be constructed along a short segment of new trail. Reconstructed trail segments will provide access to adjacent BRT stations, including updated Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, infrastructure, revegetation of disturbed landscaping, and stormwater management facilities. Next slide, please. Next up is Berkeley Road to White Bear Avenue, or segment 3. This is the first of 2 segments that will eliminate about half of the remaining 6-mile gap in the regional trail system in this area. Along with segment 4, this almost 3-mile segment is key to making a future connection with the Hardwood Creek Regional Trail in Washington County, and is being designed and constructed separately from the Rushline BRT project. Detailed design work for this segment has been completed and is planned for construction in 2024 or 2025, depending on funding availability. The proposed trail will use about a half mile of existing BNSF railroad right-of-way, with the remaining portion, about 2.2 miles, constructed within Ramsey County right-of-way. Trail amenities envisioned as part of segment 3 construction include wayfinding, rest areas with benches and trash cans, landscaping for buffers, and vegetation replacement. During the design process, providing a trail that meets ADA and other accessibility goals, reducing impacts to vegetation and other natural features, providing interesting and diverse trail user experiences, and providing opportunities to improve adjacent community infrastructure like drainage and roadways. Next slide, please. Ramsey County is currently planning the second of 2 segments that will eliminate the trail gap in the regional trail system to the Ramsey-Washington County border. This segment extends from Whitaker Street in White Bear Lake north to County Road J. Between Whitaker Street and Highway 96, the trail is planned to be within the Lincoln Avenue right-of-way and adjacent to the BNSF Railroad corridor. The figure at the bottom of the slide is figure 5 in the staff report. For the remainder of this segment, from Highway 96 to County Road J, 8 different routes and alignments were studied over a 2-year period. A big part of this study was investigating the feasibility of locating the trail within or adjacent to the BNSF right-of-way and Highway 61 corridor downtown White Bear Lake, a consistent choice expressed by many in the community. However, it was concluded that there were no feasible solutions for locating the trail within either of those spaces. Quote unquote, Route 1 was identified as the preferred route through the downtown area for connection to Hugo Road. Specific details on the preferred and an alternative trail corridor are described at the bottom of page 9 in the staff report. Funding has not yet been secured for implementation of Segment 4, but the county is actively exploring potential funding opportunities to construct all or portions of this segment. Next slide, please. Estimated cost of acquisitions in segments 3 and 4 is between $70,000 and $421,000. The variability in this estimate is because the final alignment of segment 4 has not yet been established. The total estimated cost associated with the construction and maintenance of segments 3 and 4 is $15,810,000. This includes about $5.86 million for construction of segment 3, $7.5 million for construction. You may have noticed I didn't mention any costs related to segments 2B or 2C. That is because any acquisition, development, or redevelopment in these segments will be completed under the Rush Line BRT project, meaning no cost to Ramsey County Parks and Recreation for these specific facets of implementation. That said, the plan amendment includes an estimated annual operating budget of $64,400 for the full extent of Ramsey County Trail. Altogether, the total estimated cost associated with this plan amendment is between $15,945,400 and $16,295,400, which includes the first year of operating costs. And I should note, approval of this master plan amendment does not commit the council to any funding at this time. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. If you can hear me, thank you. The Bruce Vento Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment is consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, particularly Planning Strategy 1, Master Plan requirements, as well as Planning Strategy 2, Enhanced Multimodal Access, which is referenced in the rationale section of the staff. Master Plan Amendment is also consistent with other council policies, such as those found in Thrive MSP 2040. Next slide, please. The proposed action before you then, that the Metropolitan Council Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment inform Ramsey County that when Segment 4 alignments have been finalized, it must submit a future master plan amendment to update regional trail boundaries and acquisition costs, and require Ramsey County, prior to initiating any new development of the regional trail corridor, to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council's Environmental Services Division Assistant Manager. And with that, I will stand for any questions you may have and remind you that Ramsey County staff is also on hand. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Colin. Does anyone have questions for Colin, either our normal ones or any?
Tony, you cut out there. Are you still with us? I think we lost Tony.
I think you did briefly. Someone tried to call the phone that was tethered to, and I don't think it can handle that. I was trying to ask if anyone has questions for Colin, including any for things that you missed from him trying to talk.
Cecily has several questions.
Okay, go ahead, Cecily. If Cecily's still there. Who's me again?
Tony, I can hear you. I can't hear Cecily.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Cecily. I also see a hand for Todd and then Asada. So Todd, why don't you go ahead for now?
Thank you, Chair. Colin, I had a question. You kind of broke up on me about the segment that didn't have any funds yet. And I guess I wanted some more clarification on that part. How soon will you plan, plans are to include that last segment, but I'll let you answer, Colin. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kemery, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I can.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll give this a start, and perhaps Scott Yankee would like to add to the response, but I believe you're referring to segment 4, which is the northernmost portion of this planned trail corridor between Whitaker and Whitaker Street and County Road J, basically from the south end of White Bear Lake into White Bear Township, up by Bald Eagle Otter Lake Regional Park. That portion still doesn't, at this point, does not have funding available to construct or develop. However, Ramsey County is continuing to search out funding sources for that portion. And I should note, if it wasn't made clear, that the segment that's just south, segment 3, is one that has gone through full design and is more likely next in line for construction and development. Segment 4 would be somewhat further down the line, most likely.
Okay, does that answer your question, Todd?
I think that covered it. I was just curious on if there, it's probably a hard question to answer, but is there a timeline on that? Are we talking 10 years from now, or less than 10 years, or greater than 10 years? And how will that impact segment 3 once they get to once they're fully up and running?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kemery, my understanding is that the county Parks and Recreation Department continues to seek funding for segment 4 and move forward as soon as they're able to secure that funding, and alignments are finalized in that segment. They are anticipating construction of segment 3 in 2024. As funding is available for that segment as well. So as much as I can tell you right now, Commissioner Kemery, perhaps Scott Yankee would like to add to that if he so chooses.
Thanks, Colin.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
Chair, Commission members, this is Scott Yankee, Ramsey County Parks. Colin, thanks for the great presentation and answering the questions so far. To answer your question regarding funding for section 3 and 4. So section 3, we are nearly completed with final design for that section. We do not have funding yet for implementation or construction of that, but we are looking for options, and we're hoping we will be able to find options to implement it soon. Our anticipated schedule is sometime between 24 to 2026 on starting that. Now, that is dependent on funding if we can secure a funding source for construction. Segment number 4, we have launched a preliminary design study for that segment right now. So that will get us to about a 20% preliminary design on that one. And that's really going to present us with design scenarios and the best way to proceed with that project. So we are still going to be seeking funding for segment 4 to complete final design as well as construction of that. And that one is going to be out a little ways, and obviously that is dependent on funding. The priority level for implementation of those 2 segments are segment 3 would come first, segment 4 would come second. However, we would continue the momentum on this to seek funding and complete both sections as soon as we can.
Thank you. I think that answered everything for me. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Cecily, let's try coming back to you, or is your audio there yet?
Yeah, I wasn't able to call in because I didn't have the 3 passwords that were needed. So I was able to get back into WebEx, but I have a number of questions. First of all, on I think it's figure 4, it shows a dotted line at the northern part of the map up Highway 61 into Washington County. Is that a planned alignment with Washington County?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Harris, I am just pulling up that figure here. You speaking specifically to
I'm sorry,
the figure on the
figure 2. I'm sorry.
figure 2. Okay, and that is of course the regional park system map for.
Yeah, this is from the system plan.
Yeah. Yep. I've got the orientation now. Yep. To the north of the Washington Ramsey County line there would be the Hardwood Creek Regional Trail in Washington County, which the dash line there indicates that it is still in a planned status, at least as of the published.
Well, I hope this trail doesn't end up looking like Hardwood Creek. Okay, so my next question, I realize that planning, securing construction dollars can take a lot of time, but with plans done now and funding maybe 5-6 years from now, what are we going to be doing about climate change? Hotter weather, changed weather patterns. How can the landscaping be adjusted to provide more shade? Again, think Hardwood Creek, which is very hot and dry, no vegetation. So, think about the trail experience for the users without vegetation. None of the schematics really show much.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Harris, that's an excellent question. Conversations with on this topic recently, and of course in areas where the regional trail and the Rush Line BRT are going to be co-located, there will need to be some removal of some of the screening and tree species that exist along the trail corridor. If you regional trail in this space, you probably noticed perhaps that it's quite dense in areas. It is like a green wall, and what a number of those tree species and shrub species are many invasives in nature, invasive species, I should say. And so what I've learned about areas where there is collaboration with the Rush Line, that there would be planting of native plant species to replace trees that have been, or shrubs that have been removed in the corridor. Scott may have more to say on this given topic.
Okay. Scott, can you add to that?
Yes, Chair. Colin, thanks for that. You were cutting in and out a little bit, so if there's some of it I might have missed. As we go forward with the planning right now, and obviously that's always difficult when you're planning first and complete a design, and then still seeking funding. It's still our goal that as we are moving forward with this, that when we plan and design a trail out, that we are already taking into account for elements like climate change and sensitivity to the environment. We're looking to use as much native vegetation as we can in areas where we have more room to provide that amenity. In certain areas where it is going through a little bit more urban environment, we're being sensitive to landscaping and trees in those areas, in those urban corridors. So as we move forward with that, we're already keeping that in mind, that we're being sensitive to the existing landscape and still provide for some of those components as we move forward, even though that funding may come years later.
Okay, I get that. I just worry about the increasing numbers of days in the 90s and over 100 degrees, and the need for shade structures or, vegetation to make the experience positive. So my last question, finally, and this is kind of a multi-part question. I spend a lot of time on the Browns Creek and Gateway trails, which of course are DNR trails, and there's a huge increase in the number of electric bikes in all the different categories. And I know that DNR has started to provide some guidance to users and to the companies that rent the bikes. I'm curious whether St. Paul and Ramsey County has a policy. Again, this is to make the trails safe for everyone. I'm a walker and a senior, and I'm finding, dodging the electric bikes is getting pretty crazy. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Harris, I will leave that one to Scott since this is specific to policy related to Ramsey County.
Thank you, Chair, Commission members. I will not be able to speak towards the St. Paul policy question. As for Ramsey County, that is something that we have been looking into and seeing more of a need to create a stronger policy in defining what those uses are along the trails. So as far as right now, I don't have a great answer for you, but that has been identified as a need for looking at some of those policies as some of these newer amenities are coming out and being utilized on the trails, or electric assisted bikes, as well as the electric scooters. So those are things that we're looking at, and we will look at creating a more robust policy coming up and coordinating with some of our other departments within Ramsey County in order to fulfill that.
Wonderful, thank you.
I believe the DNR regulations on that actually made it into statute, I think, from the legislature rather than just being DNR rulemaking. So probably, if that's correct, I'll have to check. I'm guessing that most other political subdivisions will roughly copy that statute for their own ordinances. Asada, what is your questions?
I just have one. I want to know, how have you responded to the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners' concern with the historical planning and community engagement process?
Mr. Chair, Once again, I will leave this one in the capable hands of Mr. Scott Yonke.
Thank you again. Great question. I'm assuming you're referring to the Ramsey County Park and Recreation Commission for that question.
It's in the letter dated March 17th, 2021.
Yes, so that letter was from our Ramsey County Parks and Recreation Commission. And we are implementing strategies on moving forward to strengthen our process for increasing better equity within our planning process, as well as achieving a racial equity lens on everything that we do. As far as for the Bruce Vento plan, this plan, we did go through a very robust engagement, as well as had equity components on that. But going forward with our planning practices and process, we're going to make sure to have better process for equity. For example, like introducing and the GARE Equity Toolkit, making sure that those components are completed. That toolkit was not completed for the Bruce Vento Master Plan Amendment, just due to when the Master Plan Amendment started. But as we go forward, we're going to be looking at better strategies, working with our commissioners, better and including a better strategy and process for going forward.
Thank you.
Okay. We have other commissioners with questions. Monica.
Thank you, Tony, Chair. I just want to question, I like the idea of trails. I'm a little concerned about private property and touching them, because I'm assuming one of those persons are okay, and then they went and checked them out in 2018, I think it was last time, and I don't know if somebody sell them or not. So to be clear, how does that look? Like, you need to buy the property, or is just gonna be, behind the property? Just an idea, or a rough idea of what is it that implied to be in a private property for the trails.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Commissioner Dillenberg, can you hear me?
Yes.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give it a start. And I could potentially pass it to Scott again here as well. As you may know, the Rush Line collaboration portions of the Bruce Vento Regional Trail have been conceived of potentially including light rail transit and now bus rail transit for many, many years, really since the beginning of the time as a regional trail, since this land was vacated by the railway. So there will likely be some impacts along that segment where local landowners and residents will have more visibility into the corridor, into the busway, and into the trail corridor itself. But my understanding is that for the most part, the trail corridor and the busway will be accommodated by the existing corridor in many locations, and in some other locations, new alignments will be developed, many of which will be in Ramsey County right-of-way or local municipality right-of-way. I believe easements will be made use of as well where necessary. But I can pause and see if Scott has any insights to add as well.
This is Scott with Ramsey County again. Great question, Colin. Good answer on that one as well. I can fill in a few gaps. So as we move forward, and you're correct, in the rush line railway, or the rush line component area from Larpenteur up to Berkeley Avenue, that is staying mainly within the existing corridor. So as far as additional acquisitions for that, I don't believe there is any additional acquisitions for that component, unless there's a need for maybe some potential stormwater components, but that anything like that would be handled with an easement. North of Berkeley Boulevard for segments number 3 and number 4. Number 3, we have identified 2 properties that we have a small easements on those, and that was just to accommodate the trail alignment shift out of the BNSF right away. And then segment number 4, we're still evaluating what the acquisition needs are going to be for that project. So the design project we have initiated right now will give us further insight on what impact is needed. Most of the area we should be able to still fit within existing right-of-way areas or on other public land. There may be some areas where there may need to be some small easements for grading or construction purposes, but we're going to be trying to keep everything within the existing right-of-ways as much as possible. So segment number 4 is a little bit undetermined. We have a little better handle on segment number 3. In the rush line segment, that one is pretty much staying within the corridor for those components.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Asada, I see your hand up. Did you have another question, or is that still from before?
That is from before.
Okay. Do we have any other questions, or would anyone like to start us in with a motion and get us into discussion?
So moved.
And a motion for the recommended actions from the staff report from Asada there? Do we have a second to that?
This is Todd. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Todd. So that proposed action motion is that the Metropolitan Council, 1, approve Ramsey County's Bruce Vento Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment. 2, inform Ramsey County that when segment 4 alignments have been finalized, it must submit a future master plan amendment to update regional trail boundaries and acquisition costs. And 3, require Ramsey County, prior to initiating any new development of the regional trail corridor, to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council's Environmental Services Division Assistant Manager. Is there any discussion on that motion? Anybody? All right, hearing none, then we'll go ahead with a vote on that motion as presented. Go ahead, Sandy, for our roll call.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with Asada Brown.
Aye.
Cecily Harris.
Yes.
Todd Kimry.
Todd Kimry votes yes.
Bob Moeller.
Bob Muller votes yes.
Thank you. Jeremy Peikel's still not here. We'll move on to Canna Yang. I don't believe she's here as well.
I'm here now. Yes.
Oh, you are. Thank you. Anthony Taylor still not here. Monica Dillenberg
Yes.
and Tony Russo.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries.
All right, thank you, everybody. So
Tony,
that-
excuse me.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that my director sent me a great link to the e-bike laws, and it's interesting, and I will share it with the commission and Council Member Vento, as well as Atlas Ingebretson. And the thing is that if local communities would like to make the laws more restrictive, they have that ability. So it's kind of interesting. So I'll send that out.
Perfect. I knew that was being discussed in the legislature, but never saw what they ultimately passed. So that'll be helpful to see.
Great.
All right, that brings us on to our information items for the day. We have a few of these. Our first one is going to be an overview of the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund program. This will be review for some people and informational, especially for our newer commissioners, on one of our major funding sources, just kind of covering where the money comes from, where it goes, and how it all works. And we have Jessica Lee to present that. Jessica, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners, and Council members. I'm Jessica Lee, and today I'm going to present an overview of the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund Grant Program. Next slide, please. I'll start with some high-level information. The Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund, or PAOF, was implemented around 2001 to provide grants to the 10 regional park implementing agencies to acquire land for the regional park system. All land acquired through the PAOF program must be within a council-approved regional park or trail master plan boundary. Lands are most often acquired in fee title, but permanent conservation easements are also an option, particularly for trail development. Funding is available on a first-come, first-served basis with individual agency limits that I'll discuss in a few slides. There's often a rush of applications at the start of the fiscal year when funding becomes available, so it's important for agencies to submit a complete application to get in line as soon as they have a signed purchase agreement. Next slide, please. Okay, on to the funding. Here's where all the acronyms come in. PAOF grants are a mix of state, council, and agency funds. There are 2 state funding sources that are matched at a 3:2 ratio with council funds. The Parks and Trails Legacy Fund, or PTLF, requires 10% of the regional parks appropriation be set aside for this program. This provides consistent funding each year. The council also applies for funding from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, or ENRTF, through the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, or LCCMR. In the past 7 years, the council has received 4 ENRTF appropriations. We may or may not apply in a given year, depending on how much funding is available overall for the PAOF program, and it can also be very competitive. So there's never a guarantee that we will receive funding when we apply. However, we were successful this year, which I'll get to shortly. The implementing agencies also contribute to the project with a required 25% match. All these numbers can be confusing, so I put an example on this slide of what the breakdown would be for a $100,000 project. State funds would pay $45,000, council funds would pay $30,000, and agency match would be $25,000. The picture on this slide is of the Crow-Hassan Park Reserve, where the PAOF program helped Three Rivers Park District acquire 2 small inholdings in the past couple of years. Crow-Hassan Park Reserve is the site of one of Minnesota's and Three River Park District's first prairie restorations. It was started in 1969 with less than 20 acres of grasses, has grown into over 840 acres of restored prairie. Next slide, please. We have a lot of funding available this year for the program, very possibly the most funding to date. The council applied for funding from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund in 2020 and were recommended for $1 million, but the legislature failed to pass a bill. So we applied again in 2021, this time asking for $3 million, and received a recommendation of $2.25 million. After a very long and uncertain legislative session, bills were passed for both 2020 and 2021, so now we have over $3 million from ENRTF. This appropriation is good for 3 years, so we have some time to spend it. We also have over $2.4 million from the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund. A small amount of the fund that was held back last year because of uncertainty around the pandemic is now available to use. We also have our fiscal 22 appropriation. The legacy funds are also available beyond this fiscal year, although they typically get used up pretty quickly. And of course, the council matches all these state funds for a total of $3.789 million, which brings our grand total funding to $10 million. Agencies are limited to $3.4 million each per fiscal year, $1.7 million from ENRTF and council match, and $1.7 million from the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund and council match. The photo on this slide is from the Bald Eagle Otter Lake Regional Park in Ramsey County, where this program helped acquire an in-holding last summer. Bald Eagle is also the site of the popular Tamarack Nature Center. Next slide, please. Appraisals and purchase agreements are required before an agency can submit an application. The appraisal must be less than 1 year old, and PAOF grants will pay for up to 110% of the appraised value. However, justification for amounts greater than 100% is required. And if using ENRTF, permission from the LCCMR is required to pay above 100%. Agencies may offer the landowner above 110%, but any amount beyond that is not eligible for grant funds or match. Occasionally, eminent domain must be used to acquire interest in land, such as trail easements, and in those cases, the council may honor the amount settled by the court. Only legacy funds can be used for eminent domain acquisitions. Next slide, please. ENRTF has some other requirements as well. Parcels must have high quality natural resources or restoration potential, and they must be in the LCCMR work plan. Council staff works with the agencies to develop the parcel list prior to applying to the LCCMR. If parcels become available after the fact, they can be amended into the work plan, but special approvals are necessary. In addition, ENRTF cannot be used to purchase structures such as houses. Occasionally, a parcel can be split and ENRTF funds can be used for the portion that contains no structures, but it's just a lot easier to use legacy funds in those situations. Again, agencies are encouraged to contact staff as soon as they know of an acquisition in order to work out the timing of the closing date. All PAOF acquisitions must be approved by MPOSC and the council. Normally, this can be accomplished within a month, 3 months of the agency submitting their application. And they may close on the property immediately following council approval, as grant agreements are backdated to that date. These two photos both show PAOF projects in Washington County. The top photo shows the future Great Cloud Island Regional Park off in the distance, where land along an inland channel of the Mississippi River was acquired last summer. Great Cloud Island is an approved regional park in our system, but is not yet open to the public. Washington County is working to acquire land as it becomes available from willing sellers, and will open the park to public use when they have sufficient land ownership. The bottom photo shows the 100-acre row property that was acquired last year for St. Croix Bluffs Regional Park. The St. Croix River is a nationally recognized wild and scenic river, and this acquisition helped protect over 1,000 feet of its shoreline. This was a particularly exciting project that used a combination of legacy and ENRTF funds. Next slide, please. Some other recent acquisitions include 37 acres for the Blakely Bluffs Park Reserve in Scott County, and several acquisitions for Three Rivers Park District, including 28 acres for the Galewoods Farm Special Recreation Feature, which was just acquired this summer, 15 acres for Lake Rebecca Park Reserve, and 5 acres for the Rush Creek Regional Trail. In addition to the projects already mentioned, Washington County also acquired 49 acres for Pine Point Regional Park. Pine Point is known for its unique blend of different habitats, including its pine trees shown in the picture here. So to summarize, the PAOF program has helped acquire and protect dozens of wonderful places like these and numerous small inholdings and trail connections, totaling well over 4,000 acres for the regional park system. And several agencies are currently working with landowners to finalize purchase agreements, and we'll be seeing many more acquisitions in the coming months. So that's all I have today, and I would be happy to take questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jessica. I have 2 things I thought of to add to that as you were going through, and then 1 question for you. One thing for commissioners to note is, while we mentioned that 25% local match requirement, they are allowed to use council and state funds that are allocated directly to that particular park agency through the CIP if they request that ahead of time. So you'll see something on these acquisition business items saying such and such agency requests future consideration for their local match from a future CIP appropriation. And that's just saying if they have to have put that in before they try to ask for it later, but we do allow them to do that from that source. And also the legacy stuff is coming from a sales tax, and the ENRTF things are coming from a mix of some things. Sometimes that gets state appropriations directly, and some of it's coming from the lottery. And then the council is doing a lot of matching with this with council bonds. So every once in a while, you'll hear us refer to special rules that come in because of rules around bonding funds. Most of it's pretty straightforward because if you're using an acquisition, that's a capital expenditure, which is the biggest thing. But there are some subtleties we've run into on that related to taxes and enterprise use that may come up. And then finally for you, Jessica, when you were mentioning the ENRTF rules, you mentioned not being able to acquire structures. And I remember in the past, there's been a distinction about that rule only being against habitable structures. So if they were not houses, or if they were houses in such a state of disrepair that they couldn't be used as houses, we still could. Is that still the case, or have those rules changed?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair. What I should have said was any structures of value. So if the structures don't have any value, it is fine to have them on there. And if I could just mention one thing that you referred to, the future reimbursement consideration. I did purposely leave that out because we've put that on pause for the time being. There's been some feedback that we might not be able to do that, so we're exploring that further, and we are currently not entertaining that option.
Oh, okay. I will have to ask Emmett more about that later.
Commissioners, there was an IRS rule change that prohibits us from doing.
IRS rule change for anyone who can't quite hear him. Okay, so we'll have to see what that. Yeah. Back on the structures thing though, in the past it wasn't about the value only, but suitable for human habitability. So there was at least one where there was an inspector that went in and concluded that the house was falling apart. So even though, like, I don't know if that meant that it didn't have value as a structure, but it just didn't have value for that particular purpose. And I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I know that's been the wording before, and I'm curious if that direction has actually changed from LCCMR or if we're interpreting it differently.
Thanks for the follow-up, Chair. I'm not familiar with that situation. However, what we have internally decided as of late is to just only spend the funds on the actual land acquisition itself. And so we prefer to not use the funding for structures, whether there's a value and it's not habitable or no value or of value. So we want to make sure all those funds are going to protect the land. And so that's sort of our internal procedures, and whether or not it's allowed or not from LCCMR, it's just not the direction that we wanted to go with.
Okay, so that's an issue of council priorities in addition to LCCMR rules.
Correct. Sort of a combination of the two.
Okay. Anybody else have questions on that? I am not seeing any hands or hearing anybody. So I think we will move on to our next one. And this, thank you, Jessica, that was helpful. Our next thing is developing a post-COVID understanding for our work together, talking about how we do our meetings and stuff. We have Emmett talking on this. Go ahead, Emmett.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Great. So I want to begin by saying that the Metropolitan Council is closely tracking the pandemic developments and the Delta variant. And right now, the council is in reassessment mode for both our public meetings as well as our office protocols. I was in the office yesterday getting a few things done, and during that time, I learned that there was a mask mandate that just went into place, and so the mask mandate for the council buildings is back, and but it's fair to say that things are really changing, um, and we are following what we hear from the governor's office, from the Minnesota Department of Health, and the Center for Disease Control. We did send out a survey to the commissioners, and I want to thank everyone who was able to respond to that. That was very helpful. I do, even though this survey I think now is slightly out of date, just because we issued the survey sort of just ahead of some of the recent findings. Um, I think it still would be worthwhile to share with you what we learned from you. So these are just themes, and they're general themes. So some commissioners did express a desire to return to in-person meetings once it's deemed safe. Um, I think that there was a feel from some commissioners that they just feel that in-person meetings are more effective. And I struggled today with some of the audio and hearing the presentations, and I really understand that uh, both concern and belief. Um, that said, some commissioners expressed concern that they still don't feel that it's safe to meet in person. They wouldn't feel comfortable meeting in person. Um, Many commissioners expressed an interest in outdoor tours for the fall. Um, the idea that we wouldn't have an indoor component, people would drive themselves to the tour. We would practice, safe social distancing and so forth. So I think that's gives me hope. We're not going to do a September tour, and October I think we'll probably know some more. Um, the final thing I just wanted to say that there were several comments from commissioners expressing the desire that a hybrid meeting could be accommodated by the council. The idea that people could join in person or they could join virtually. And I just wanted to say that right now that this is not an option. The council is not outfitted for this option. And there is some complexity with the public meeting law that says if a commissioner is to meet virtually, we would need to post the location at which they're participating. And I didn't really understand that and need to go into greater detail, but just rest assured that there's still some complexity there. So for now, hybrid meetings are not an option. Those were sort of my takeaways from the survey, but I would love to open it up to our council member or commissioners if you have anything else you'd like to share. Just sort of taking a barometer or a check-in on where people are at.
Emmett, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly what you were saying. So going forward, we're not sure when we're going to go back to in person, but when we do go back, there will not be the option for someone to participate remotely. Is that, am I catching that right?
Council member, you're catching that exactly right.
Okay. So, and there's not a date set by when a decision would be made about going back in person.
No, there is no date right now
Okay.
set. It is very much back up in the air.
And that is and the decision making about that sits with the chair of the council.
That is exactly right.
Okay.
It's
Thank
actually
you.
slightly more complicated than that. um, in terms of the question about, just so everyone knows, I know some of you like the virtual meetings. The reason we can't accommodate that later is that we are operating under an exemption clause in the open meeting law that says if it is determined to be not practical or safe due to a pandemic, then a bunch of things are canceled and you're allowed to do extra stuff. So there's a determination made of, is it safe to go back or not? As long as we're saying that it's not safe, then we can do virtual stuff. As soon as we say it appears to be safe, then everything goes back fully under open meeting law, and that's what we don't have the ability to do normally. That determination right now is being made by the Met Council chair. There are actually 3 different people who can make that determination, which is the Met Council chair, I believe the regional administrator, and myself as the chair of this body. So it's possible that different Met Council bodies might end up doing different things at different times if they have particular needs due to who their membership is, but we've been trying to keep that as uniform as possible so far, and only addressing that later if we have to. But yeah, it's all in an open meeting law thing about a determination that it's not currently safe that allows us to have this electronic exemption. That's what we're operating under. I would say we've asked about this a little bit before for some other reasons, and there's some things in the open meeting law that allow for non-in-person participation, but they're worded in such incredibly archaic ways that they don't fit stuff like WebEx or Zoom or any of that kind of stuff, because they're set up for like either it's like closed circuit television kind of stuff. And there's some Office of Administrative Hearing guidance on how that applies, but it's sort of wishy-washy and not really straightforward. I would hope that after all of this, maybe the Met Council's legal and I can't come up with the word right now, but lobbying arm might propose at least some updates to the language in the open meeting law, even if they aren't really functional changes in what it was trying to accomplish, at least addressing the changes in technology so that we know what our guidance is and is not. Because we've asked some stuff about maybe we can do this, and legal comes back with, we're not sure, so we're not gonna. And it'd be nice to know for sure. So a project maybe for the next legislative session to attempt to get some of that cleared up.
Chair, I agree with you on that, and just so that you know, actually several months ago, maybe even 6 months ago this winter, after hearing from a couple of commissioners and seeing also the impacts of you know, the pandemic and the nature of what we do and how hard it is for people sometimes to step away when they are sick. And trying to think about how, like you said, how do we update our practices given, one, the technology that we have to be able to do what we can do, and two, to create a more accessible body for participation, a more inclusive body that can, especially living in the climate we live in, where we can have roads that are not hospitable to travel for significant portions of the year, to people talking about as they age wanting to continue to participate, but maybe not feeling as comfortable or as able with that drive. And on the other end of that spectrum, having young kids and trying to navigate those things and be able to participate. Being able to participate remotely means increased access as well. So I did share that several months ago with the chair, just to say, hey, can we advocate for updating these rules and talk about what it means from an access and inclusivity perspective, and as well as a public health perspective when that is triggered, as well. And I have updated a letter that I'll be sending to that effect as well. And it's helpful to hear the outcomes of the survey from you all, and wanted to make sure that other than just folks reaching out to me or me reaching out to folks and hearing from them, that we all had an opportunity to be asked that question. And I want to thank staff for being responsive and putting that together.
Are there any other questions or comments on that? Yes, Cecily was just saying to us that, yes, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm one of the members who's the furthest away, but I live in northern Washington County, and Wi-Fi is really unreliable here. And my cell phone doesn't work half the time because we don't have a cell tower. So, you know, for me, it's really a disadvantage. And I know there's COVID and there are many other factors at play, but for people in my district, it's really hard to connect this way to meetings.
Sure. Yeah, I think what we would like to have, we're hearing mixed feedback, so we'd love to be able to do some sort of hybrid thing with some people in person and some not. And that is what is unfortunately very difficult to do right now. But yeah, I definitely hear you, since normally my internet is fine, but apparently not today, so I'm sympathetic. I think once I ended up joining a meeting for another body from a coffee shop, which was extra special. You couldn't hear anything when they fired up the grinder.
And I'm about 15 miles from a coffee shop, so that's kind of out for me too.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Bob.
You know, I'm probably on the other end of the area, Cecily, from you. I'm way out in Carver County. The wintertime at my age now becomes a little bit of a problem for me. The other thing is, I certainly agree that today's meeting was much more difficult to participate in because it was so broken up, and just trying to keep track of the comments, watching the slide without eye contact. No doubt that the meetings are not as effective and interactive on the web versus in person. Tony, you're right. It would be great if we had some option of hybrid participation at times, but I support ultimately getting back together in person because it makes for a better meeting. It is nicer for us to create relationships with one another as part of this program. So I support the in-person meeting, even though I'm out here in the Tulies. That's all.
Okay, thanks for the comment, Bob. Monica.
Thanks, Tony. I just want to say that whatever is working, I'm fine with that. I will be happy to meet everybody in person. I also think the meetings in person will be easier because you can see people. You are able to know if you should talk or not. It's hard when you don't have anybody in the video. And I know I'm one of those, but my video is really bad. And if I turn it on, my audio goes down, which everybody has problems with that. And hey, if we want to just, go against the new guidelines, I'm all for it. Let's go and break the rules. But no, I totally support, and I understand being far away. I didn't thought about how hard it should be having, Wi-Fi everywhere, but it's true. I mean, in Brooklyn Park, so it's easier for me to have Wi-Fi most of the time. But I'm sure when school starts and everybody's taking away the, the brand and everything, is gonna go down again if they go distance. And at this point, nobody knows what's happening. But I just wanna say that whatever you decide, I support the decision.
All right, thank you. Anyone else before we move on?
Thank you, Tony and commissioners and council member. We will continue to monitor the situation, and I will be in close contact with Tony on this.
Right. Thank you, Emmett. Our last information item is our shared equity learning, or equity nudge as we've called it before, talking about a future Bdote tour and the Stories I Didn't Know program. We have Amanda, Lovelee, and Emmett to talk about this.
Good evening, commissioners, council members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully you'll get to see my face. I'll do my best to be animated. And hopefully my internet will keep working. We can all cross our fingers. Yeah, fingers crossed. So yes, tonight we are talking about learning from Place the Bdote and Stories I Did Not Know. As we've been learning together and listening to the commissioners' ideas around equity, we're excited about these two upcoming opportunities to grow together. Next slide, please. So we've talked a little bit about learning from Place the Bdote. You've all been sent a calendar invite for September 17th from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for a tour/workshop that will begin at Fort Snelling Park, and then we will move to Indian Mountains Regional Park. This is a really unique opportunity to learn about different significant Dakota sites here in the Twin Cities and learn from the Dakota community members whose stories and histories that have often been left out of our state histories. Multiple people on our parks team have had the opportunity to go on this workshop, and I definitely found it as a transformative opportunity. Emmett, any words you'd like to say about your experience?
Only to say that it's very worthwhile.
I was trying to make us interactive together.
Oh, good.
All right.
And the Bdote, the confluence of the Mississippi and Minnesota rivers is just, it's a very special place, and it has special significance with the Dakota tribe. So, yeah, something.
It's a really unique experience, and the picture is actually of that spot right there. Next slide, please. So as we have been listening to you, we have this great opportunity. Bob Muller, thank you for your great advice about sharing with the commissioners, along with the park agency staff and our own council staff, Stories I Did Not Know, which is a 1-hour documentary about Rita Davern's, how she examines her personal narrative and family legend at the heart of a Minnesota's family's past. And what's really unique about this really short documentary is that also Ramona, who is in the movie with Rita, is also one of the tour guides of the Bdote tour. And so Tracy and our team conveniently reached out and talked to Rita about organizing this opportunity, again, for MPOSC and also for our staff and for the park agency commissioners in relation to the Bdote tour. So we purchased a agreement to be able to share this, and Emmett will be sending a code to you and a link where you can log into the movie, type in the code, and you'll get to watch this 1-hour documentary. Next slide, please.
Hey, Amanda, I was wondering,
Yes.
this was a really profound documentary, and Bob, you were the one that raised it. I don't know if you had anything. I'm sorry I didn't give you more of a heads up than this, but if you had anything further you wanted to share about that.
Well, what I would say is that Rita Davern told a story about her great-grandfather owning this land and how it began to bother her. And it's a very personal story. I mean, I was amazed at how really very personal this whole thing got, and how she really is interested in trying to find a way back for the people who originally owned it. Very compelling, I thought. Made me really kind of wonder about my own grandparents' ownership of their farms as well. Very, very impactful, very much worth watching.
Thank you, Bob, for your amazing on-the-spot review. And so not only are we going to share with you the ability to watch this movie from your own home with your own popcorn, but we are also going to have a facilitated discussion with Rita Davrin and Ramona Keatley Stately and Ruben Quito Stately, who are all three are in this documentary. And so on September 30th, from 3 to 4 p.m., they will help lead a facilitated conversation. So again, I'll go through dates. So first we'll go on the Bdote tour, or you can watch the movie beforehand because Emmett will be sending out the code and you can watch the movie whenever you find fits into your schedule in life. Then there's the opportunity to go on this pretty amazing tour, which again, we know that many of you have jobs and other things, so maybe you can't come, and that's fully understandable, but you can still participate by watching this movie. You don't have to go on the tour, but you're more than welcome to. And then we will round it out after that with a discussion. And again, Ramona will be helping lead the tour and will also be on the discussion and as a part of the documentary. So there's multiple different opportunities to engage. And if you haven't already, please respond to that calendar invite. There's only a certain amount of spaces that we have for the Bdote tour. And if MPOSC isn't going, if you can't make it, we're going to make sure other people at the council staff get to participate in the tour. But first choice is this team.
Amanda.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna add that the Minnesota Humanities Center does have really good COVID practices in place. In fact, the tour has headsets for participants to wear, so we can really stay spread out, but you can still follow the tour.
Yeah, and it used to be in one big bus, and they've kind of changed their whole thing with COVID. That's why we're all driving independently, staying separated, being outside. So our hope for these opportunities that will help deepen our understanding of equity and the regional park system. If there's any questions, please let me and Emmett know.
And commissioners, I'm teeing up an email. I'm not working while the meeting's on, but I'll send it out right afterwards because I wanted to send the bike law, the e-bike law, just because I thought it was interesting. And I will include the 3 dates of these 3 events and the link so that you can just click the link on, and then it's like you got to type in the password, which I probably shouldn't share online. So thank you. And thanks, Bob, again for your suggestion.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions on that? All right. Thanks, Jessica and Emmett. That then, I guess, brings us down to our reports. I guess the main thing I want to highlight is the same thing I said at the beginning for anyone who joined us later, that we've changed our options for public comment here at our meetings. There's going to be the ability for you to actually speak if you wish by pre-registering with staff by sending an email to the address on our agendas. Or you can also still just send comments over email if you prefer, but I know some people have been asking for that. And then, of course, we have things in motion for possible tours, but still not really locked down, figuring that out. And I think that's all I really have. Are there other commissioner reports? Oh, I
This is
take it
Todd.
back.
I'd like to make a small report.
Go ahead, Todd. Then I have some to add.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So the DNR got a hold of me about 4 weeks ago, and they're wanting to add more accessibility in their wildlife management areas in their different properties that they own. So we're working on a PowerPoint for the managers of these. I believe it's 86 different areas on accessibility and parks and trails and that sort of thing. So I'm excited to get started with the DNR and be able to work with them on educating their managers on what compliance means and how they can be responsible that way. Thank you. That's all that I have.
Okay, excellent. The thing that just remembered is for particularly, and Cecily and Jeremy, who's not here, Ramsey County is doing some public engagement right now related to their parks ordinance. In particular, some of the things of interest is that they're looking at updating their park hours, which is something that I've raised with this group before as one holdout that's kind of different from the rest of our region, in that they're still tied to sunrise and sunset times. So that will have a big change on how useful those parks are to people working during the week if those can get changed. And then another piece related to equity is they're looking at how to deal with violations of the ordinance, whether things should be downgraded to petty misdemeanors or administrative citations, similar to some stuff that you've heard talked about in the city of St. Paul, not necessarily limited to parks, but for other things. So if you know anybody in Ramsey County or who recreates in Ramsey County, point them to some of the stuff on Ramsey County's website and social media. They're having some virtual meetings coming up, as well as online comments related to those. So there's some significant equity impact stuff in there that's of particular interest to our work. Other commissioners? Okay, staff reports?
No staff reports. Tony, I'll just commit to the group that we will be monitoring this COVID, the evolution of the COVID and Delta variant, and your health and safety is front of mind. So thank you for your patience with today's meeting, and we will really work on our the quality of these meetings while we continue online. So we're committed to September will be virtual. So thank you.
Okay, and Linnea.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to share, I've been asked to support and serve on an advisory committee for the DNR that's looking at future funding and from fee structures to everything else. So I'll loop back in with this group and may ask staff to share some opportunities for input in the future. And so just wanted to share about that, and I hope to hear some more around work that the Outdoor Recreation Task Force is doing, or we hope to do going forward as well. So those are just a couple of other things in the duties as assigned category gets added on to the role of being a council member. And but I'm excited for that conversation, and it is impactful for all of our systems as they are so connected, and look forward to hearing thoughts and feedback from all the commissioners here related to that work. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Anyone's not chomping at the bit to jump in with anything else. I believe we are ready to adjourn relatively early again. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.